Hello, my name is Jennifer Jackson, and welcome to the 3 Ways to Vote During the Coronavirus Pandemic webinar. I am co-president of the League of Women Voters of Lexington, and tonight we're going to talk about how you can vote in the 2020 general election. The coronavirus has changed the way we do a lot of things, and it's definitely affected this election. And so we just want to review everything so you are well prepared and you can cast your ballot and have your voice heard. This information that we are going to go over tonight pertains primarily to Fayette County. However, the general rules for voting apply to everyone in the state of Kentucky. First, let me tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that focuses on engaging voters. Our mission is to make sure that voters are informed and participate in our democracy. We believe that our democracy works best when everyone participates. And despite our name being the League of Women Voters, we are a league of men, women, people from all kinds of different backgrounds. So this name came from 1920 when the league was formed, and women had gotten the right to vote when the 19th Amendment passed. It was decided that we needed to let women know what their rights were and educate them about this newfound voting right. Due to Jim Crow laws and other kind of voter suppressive tactics, unfortunately, Black women did not get the right to, although they were legally had the right to vote, they were prohibited from voting through various mechanisms until 1965 when the Voting Rights Amendment was passed. Many of the protections of the Voting Rights Amendment have been kind of removed, and so that's one of the issues that the League of Women Voters is working on in trying to restore some of those voting protections in what's called the Voting Rights Advancement Act, which has recently been renamed after Senator John Lewis. Before you can vote, you should know that you actually need to register to vote first. So you can register to vote today if you are a citizen, you're 18 years old. If you are going to be 18 by November 3rd, you can register when you are 17 years old. You must live in Kentucky. Now, this is an important point. In Kentucky, people who've been convicted of a felony conviction do not automatically get their voting rights back after they've served their time. However, there has been a recent executive order that was signed in December of 2019, and that restores voting rights automatically for people who had a non-violent felony. You can get more information about this at civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov. Be aware that sometimes when you put your information in, that it may come back as inconclusive. You can simply call the Department of Corrections at 502-782-9731. So that's 502-782-9731, and they'll be more than happy to look it up for you. So 175,000 Kentuckians have gotten their voting rights back since December of 2018, and many of them may not be aware of it. It did not require filling out any paperwork, paying any fees or anything like that. It was automatically done. So definitely check it out at civilrightsrestoration.ky.gov. There's a few other requirements. And so, of course, you can only vote once. You cannot claim the right to vote in anywhere else. Now, I want to remind you that the voter registration deadline is October 5th at 4 p.m. to vote in the 2020 election. So that is coming up quickly. Be sure to register. Now I'm going to tell you how you can register to vote. You can visit vote411.org and click register to vote. Then choose the option to finish your voter registration online with Kentucky in the blue button. It will bring you here to the Secretary of State's website. This is going to give you some information. The voter registration deadline is October 5th at 4 p.m., so keep that in mind. And then you're just going to click next. This also gives you kind of information. You want to read through that. Then you're going to want to choose that you are registering as an individual. Now, after you fill out all of your information, you want to make sure that you receive this confirmation. That thanks you for registering to vote. If you don't get this confirmation, then you may not have hit the submit button, so you just want to double check and make sure that everything was submitted. So let's talk about voting. In the general election this year, there are 3 options for voting. 1, you can vote by mail-in absentee ballot. Everyone can vote this way because of the coronavirus. You can vote early in person, and that is exactly the same as voting on election day. Usually, early voting in Kentucky is considered absentee ballot voting. In this election, it is not absentee voting. It is just like a normal election voting. And then, of course, you have the option to vote in person on election day. So let's talk a little bit more about mail-in voting. This year, anyone can qualify to request a mail-in absentee ballot if you're concerned about coronavirus pandemic. So whether you're concerned about yourself contracting it, spreading it to a family member, spreading it to other people in the community, then you are able to request a mail-in ballot. So basically, this should be everyone qualifies. Request your ballot at vote411.org, or you can go to govoteky.com. You need to request mail-in absentee ballot by October 9th at 11:59 p.m. After that time, only if you have a medical emergency would you be able to request an absentee ballot. So all mail-in ballots need to be postmarked by November 3rd. So if you put it in a mailbox, you want to make sure that the pickup hasn't happened for that day if you wait until November 3rd. Ballots must be received by the county clerk by November 6th at 6 p.m. If you have concerns about mailing delays, you can return your ballot to a secure drop box. The county clerk has 6 drop boxes around Lexington. And we'll talk about those locations when we talk about locations for voting. So if you do want to request your absentee ballot, if you go to govoteky.com, you can request it. It's the first option that you will see. Notice that there are several other things that you can do on this website. You can check your absentee ballot request status. You can update your registration if you are in the military, then and you're overseas, which you can request your ballot this way too. Polling locations is also available. Be aware that county clerks have been having to submit polling locations to the Secretary of State, State Board of Elections, and the governor. And as of today, not all of them have been approved. So that information will continue to be populated. You want to make sure that your ballot gets counted. And the most important thing that I can say is that you need to read and follow the instructions. So many ballots were not counted during the primary election because people did not follow all of the instructions. It does have a specific sequence, and there are certain things you need to do, but we're going to go over that right now so you can make sure that you do it correctly. So first, you want to mark your ballot. So you're going to use blue or black ink or a pencil, and it's similar to filling out a Scantron or a test if you've ever done that before. And make sure that you flip your ballot over to the reverse side, because you may not, there may be information on the back side of the ballot that you will need to review and vote on as well. You're going to want to sign and seal both inner and outer envelopes. Now, of course, there's a specific sequence for this. So the ballot is going to go into the internal yellow absentee ballot envelope. There's a flap on the back. Do not tear that off. If you tear it off, you're at risk for having your ballot not being counted. Make sure you sign the yellow envelope and seal it. You must sign, you must seal. These are all important steps for making sure that your ballot gets counted. Then you are going to place your sealed yellow envelope with your ballot inside the white envelope. You will sign on that, and then you're going to seal that. Now, make sure that you're not trying any fancy signatures or changing up your signature. You want your signature to match, and you also want them to match what's on your driver's license or any other type of identification that they would have on file. Then you're simply going to return your ballot to the county clerk, and you can do that either through the mail, or you can do that by depositing it at a drop box. So the second way that you can vote is doing in-person voting during the pandemic. So there's no excuse early voting, and that starts October 13th and runs through November 2nd. The hours are Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. On Election Day, which is November 3rd, you can vote between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. If you are in line by 6 p.m., election officials must let you vote. So do not leave without voting. These are the voting locations in Lexington. So there are going to be 6 voting locations. Notice that there are different color-coded locations. So Dropbox only is Fayette County Clerk's office. They will not have any in-person polling there. So you can drop off your ballot. It's centrally located, so that is convenient. There are 2 locations that have in-person voting only, and that is Bluegrass Community and Technical College on Leestown Road, and also the Dunbar Community Center. Then we have locations where there will be a drop box and you can vote in person. Those are 3 of Lexington's libraries, so the Beaumont branch, Tates Creek branch, and the Northside branch. You may also vote at the Lexington Senior Center. Notice that the voting locations are spread throughout the city, and everybody can vote at any voting location. So unlike a regular election where you have a specific precinct and you need to vote in that precinct, this gives you the flexibility to vote at whichever location is closest to you and most convenient. For example, it may be more convenient to go to a location that's closer to your work. Also note that there is a new photo ID law. The acceptable forms of ID, you must have your name and photo on it. Typical ID will be your driver's license, but you may also use a college ID or a postgraduate technical school ID. A military ID will suffice, and if you have personal acquaintance with the election official, then that will also work as well. But the official will have to sign an affidavit saying that they know you, so that may take a little bit of extra time, so be patient with that. If you do not have a photo ID, you can obtain a free state-issued photo ID card at the circuit clerk's office, one of the Kentucky Transportation Regional offices. We are aware that many of the offices have been closed during the coronavirus pandemic, and so actually during this election, you may show IDs that were acceptable before this law went into effect. Here's the question. You couldn't get an appointment to get an ID. What do you do? So you can still vote. You need to sign a reasonable impediment declaration. You still need to present a form of ID, and this would be the type of ID that you could normally show in elections prior to this new law going into effect as of July 15, 2020. So an ID with a photograph in your name, so driver's license. You could show a social security card or credit or debit card with your name on it. If you have a food stamp ID, electronic benefit transfer card, then those things would work as well. And of course, a military ID. So upcoming general election, we always think of Election Day being on November 3rd, but this year actually voting goes from October 13th through November 3rd. And again, votes cast on October 13th or 14th, anytime during that early voting period, are considered normal votes. I also want to dispel the myth that absentee votes aren't counted or only counted if it's close. That is not true. So all votes are counted, absentee ballots, mail-in, voting early in person, all of those are counted. Also, to review, your mail-in absentee ballot must be received by the county clerk by November 6th. So I want to tell you about a resource that the League of Women Voters has that can help you stay up to date on any coronavirus related changes to the election dates and processes. You can check your registration status. There's a first time voter checklist. There's all kinds of candidate information at different levels. And that is vote411.org. And this is a great resource. You can use it to make a voting plan. And we know that making a voting plan will be more likely to actually vote if we think about the whole process of how we're going to do it. In this election, we have a lot more flexibility, but sometimes with more flexibility, we may not put it high on the priority list. So thinking about your plan, maybe the day of the week when you may have time to either go in person, or if you want to vote by mail, then you definitely want to go ahead and request your mail-in absentee ballot, because that deadline is approaching on October 9th at 11:59 p.m. So Vote 411 can help you answer these questions. Whether you're going to vote early, election day, or by mail, all of those things are options. What type of ID that you need to bring with you to the polls. When are the next elections? So, we just talked about when this election is, but in the future, you can always check here to find out when future elections are. And then finding out what you're voting on. For this election, there are 2 constitutional amendments that are on the ballot. And so you can get more information about that here. Also, you can find out where your polling location is. So what are you going to be voting on? You can find out what's on your ballot here at vote411.org. And what you do is you will put in your address to get started, and that will bring up what's exactly on your ballot. If you do decide to vote in person, then I recommend that you check polling times. You can double check this at lexingtonky.gov/vote. Do not leave without voting. If you go and there's a problem that arises, then election officers can help you with that problem. Do not leave without voting. If anything, you can cast a provisional ballot, but hopefully they would be able to help you with any issues that arise, and it's a smooth process. To make sure that you are able to vote, you want to make sure that you bring your ID, and you can always go back and review the acceptable forms of ID. And we ask that you please wear a mask and practice social distancing, because there are many people who are at risk for the coronavirus, and while we all want to have our democracy work and have everyone's voice be heard, we do not want anyone to be at risk of catching the coronavirus or any complications from that disease. Be familiar with your rights. As a voter, you have several rights. So you can cast this provisional ballot that I mentioned, even if your name is not on the voter list. So there may be some kind of glitch or something, and then you can cast that provisional ballot, and then they will sort it out. Again, you can also get help casting your ballot. If you made a mistake, then you can get a new ballot before you turn it in. Again, if there's any issues that come up, just ask the election officials. You can also watch the election process. Typically, the Fayette County clerk, they will have a webcam up where they're counting mail-in ballots. So that process is very transparent. And these are some voting resources that I also want to share with you. So the website that we talked about before, lexingtonky.gov.vote/vote, that is going to have Lexington specific information. And then at vote411.org, that is the League one-stop shop for voting information. That's where our candidate guide will be. There'll be other information there. And then govoteky.org or .com. Actually, you can type out the whole word, govotekentucky.com, govotekentucky.org. It all directs to the same website, and that is the Secretary of State's online portal. A fourth voting resource that I want to share with you is Vote Riders. So this is an organization that is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that helps people get a voter ID. So for example, if you were to need a copy of your ID to mail in with your application for a mail-in absentee ballot, they could help you with that. If you needed to try to get a copy of your birth certificate and there's some like issue with the hospital that you were born at not being in business anymore, things, kind of complicated things like that, they can help you. Even if it's not complicated. This is a great resource and I would check it out. It also has information about the ID requirements for the state of Kentucky, as well as all 50 states. Speaking of mail-in absentee ballots, I just want to mention that if you request your mail-in absentee ballot through the online portal, you do not have to send in a photocopy of your photo ID. If you call the county clerk and they put your information in through the their like access to the online portal, you also do not have to send in a copy of your ID. However, if you request a application for a mail-in ballot, you do have to send in a copy of your ID with that application. So the easiest thing, again, just go to the portal, turn in your information that way. It's fast, it takes less than 2 minutes, and you'll be all set. And it's the quickest, easiest, most streamlined way to register to vote and get an absentee ballot. So if you want to get involved with the League of Women Voters, you can join us on Outreach Circle. So this is our relational outreach app, and this is going to have all kinds of information on it. We've got videos on how to complete your absentee ballot. We have voting locations and information. We have ways to get involved if you want to volunteer. And we will be putting any updates on Outreach Circle that is important to the election and you may need to know. Check it out. It also has links to how to request your mail-in ballot, all of these different links. And so it's one place you can go to get all of your voting information and find out what's going on with our local league. So thank you so much for watching this presentation. I hope it was helpful and helped you cast your ballot. Thank you so much for putting the power into the people's hands. So voting is power. So exercise your right to vote in the 2020 general election. Thank you.